With the greatest respect, anybody with any sense can see that the statements put out by our ministers, in particular our Chancellor and the rest of government, are either flat out lies, negligent statements, or well-intentioned statements and policies which are blowing up in their face before our very eyes, revealing what's really going on. Now, in this video, I'm talking about all of the news which is jumping all over tax rises in this autumn budget, despite them saying, quote, no more tax increases in this parliament, and despite Keir Starmer saying no increase in council tax and all sorts of stuff. So I'm going to come to those headlines and talk through some of those in a minute, along with some very real, hard-hitting guidelines for anyone that wants to get out of this mess yourself, survive this government and this parliament, such as it is, whilst all of this nonsense is going on. Because without it, I can assure you everybody's going to struggle. So with great respect, please do pay attention throughout the whole of this video. I'm not being preachy. This is not being any kind of guru or genius. I have followed what other people have said, and it has worked for me, and it has worked for countless thousands of others. It will work for you too. So I am just passing on what has helped me. It's just what I do, and I think that has helped. So please do subscribe here to my money channel. This is my Daniel Shensmith channel about money, creating wealth, business tips, tricks, doing what you love, and creating more money and wealth as you go along, and avoiding the pitfalls that is represented by this government. Thank you so much. Let's come to some of these headlines first of all. And the second half of the video, what do we do about it? Because there's only so much we can do about it. But let's go to the headlines first. Now, these are not recent headlines, sadly. These are from November, only as recently as November. No more tax increases in this parliament, Chancellor Rachel Reeves tells the rest of the MPs. The government has, quote, set the envelope for spending this parliament and will not be coming back with more tax increases. Despite the, let me jump to a recent headline, £50 billion black hole in the economy, and Reeves must raise tax to cover the £41 billion gap. Now, back to this headline, what they said previously. Now, you'll remember that as they kept repeating, so you could hardly forget that they were talking about a £22 billion black hole. I think that figure is going to be etched on the memory of everybody until they become historians. And everyone will look at that and think, well, that was left by the Tories, 22 billion. If that was real, that's a really big deal. Even though they wouldn't actually commit to detail, that would be quite a big deal. So now when they look at a £41 billion gap, that's an even bigger deal. And increasing taxes to the tune that they have to many tens of billions of pounds, this is quite something. Back to the November headlines. There was a few things here that they were questioned about various aspects of the policy, increases, national insurance and so on. Let's have a look at just a very quick recap of what was said back there. When asked about the impact of national insurance rises on wages, she said, Chancellor Reeves said, that she would not dispute the OBR findings, but reiterated that difficult choices were needed to fill the spending gap. Then, you understand, as we've moved on since then, but this was then. She said that some of the rises could be absorbed by businesses through profits and efficiency, though some would be reflected in wages. And obviously, we've now seen since November, wages plummet, graduate jobs and those jobs and wages plummet, and a lot of people are in fact struggling. Moving to the general corporate tax roadmap published alongside the budget, she said it was widely welcomed by businesses and caps corporation tax at 25% for the rest of Parliament, etc. So just reiterate, caps corporation tax at the current 25% for the rest of Parliament. We will wait and see whether that's actually true come this budget. But as for the rest of that statement, widely welcomed by businesses, I somewhat doubt that. I doubted it at the time. And if we look at recent surveys published, you can see this, it's quite small, but it's here, the 10th of July. This is how businesses really feel about what's going on. The latest National Business Confidence Monitor for second quarter 2025 shows that business confidence fell further into negative territory, reflecting ongoing concerns about the tax burden and slower expected domestic and export sales growth. So not what she said there. And remember that neither she nor Angela Rayner would actually name businesses with whom they claim to have had these conversations for this widely welcomed proposal or proposals regarding tax generally. They refused to name those businesses, yet still claimed that it was widely welcomed by business. And another headline back in November from The Guardian, Rachel Reeves promises not to increase taxes, rises again in the spring budget, etc. So all of these headlines right back then, now contradicted by what is now being reported in this August 50 billion black hole. With this article going on to warn you about further tax rises. Taxes must rise in the autumn if Chancellor Reeves is to meet her self-imposed borrowing rules. It says the government is on track to miss its own target by £41.2 billion, according to the National Institute of Economic and Social Research. It says that moderate but sustained increases in tax, including reform of the council tax system, to make up the shortfall. Now, don't know about you, but services of late are not quite what they used to be. There's cuts here and there. And I know certain areas, particularly Birmingham, are absolutely overrun and some not receiving services at all. Keir Starmer defended the government's handling of the economy, but did not explicitly answer a question, he never seems to do so, about whether taxes would rise in the autumn in the upcoming budget. And when asked about it during a school visit about the tax rises, he said, some of the figures that are being put out are not the figures I recognise. What kind of an answer is that? Doesn't really tell anybody anything. But he goes on to say, in the autumn, we'll get the full forecast and obviously set our budget. He said, adding that the budget would focus on living standards and making sure that people feel better off. I don't think people generally feel better off, and I don't think that's going to happen if they increase taxes yet further. It's been suggested, rather alarmingly, that the government could raise revenue through changes to the scope of VAT, which could be either what the VAT applies to, for example, gambling, which on the one hand you could argue, yes, it should have VAT applied. On the other hand, it would just drive people to illegitimate, unlicensed premises. The other alternative is that they could increase VAT, meaning everything is more expensive because any business that charges VAT, naturally, anything they sell, any goods or services they sell will increase. And so that I can only see fueling inflation as well. But they also look at pension allowances, prolonging the freeze on income tax thresholds, etc. When she became Chancellor, she set out two rules for government borrowing, which is the difference between public spending and tax income. The first rule was day-to-day spending would be paid for by government revenue, which is mainly taxes. Borrowing can only be for investment. The second rule was that debt must be falling as a share of national income by the end of a 5-year period. She's repeatedly said that these rules are non-negotiable. Originally promised, again, no tax rises, and in its manifesto promised not to raise taxes such as income tax, VAT, national insurance on working people. Now, obviously, that has happened. Whether they agree with it or not, an increase in employer national insurance is an increase in tax on working people because ultimately they are the product of the company. They will be paying those taxes one way or another. And coming back once more to what people think generally of how the government is handling the economy, the big red line at the top, 74% as it currently stands, thinks that the government is handling the economy badly. So now, with all that in mind, they are certainly not going to take care of this for you. So we need to do that ourselves. So I have one or two absolutely crystal clear outline plans for you to do, which regardless of this government, regardless of this budget, regardless of what happens, these can really apply to you and help you. And along with all that, something for you for free, which you can download, which I'll explain in just a moment. Don't go away. As an aside, now that the Online Safety Act is well and truly in force and the government has set up this elite police squad to monitor social media for things they don't like, now is absolutely the right time to make sure that you are safe and secure and indeed anonymous when you're online and posting things online. Not that I advocate breaking the law, of course I don't, but it is peace of mind knowing that you've got a cloak of anonymity. And to that end, I use and I am partnered with NordVPN for this video. In fact, I paid for NordVPN with my own money a long time ago and I've used it ever since. It is a virtual private network which gives you access to an anonymous IP address which cannot be tracked. They keep no logs of anything you do and what you visit online, and you can virtually change your location to another country, which gives you access to services which you may not get in this country if they've been restricted. For example, I've seen screenshots and have tested myself certain posts and content on X, for example, that has been restricted in the UK, presumably because of these new laws. But if I use NordVPN and access it from the United States, that content is no longer restricted. And for those of you who are worried, it is absolutely not illegal in the UK to use a VPN, and it is extremely unlikely to ever get banned. And of course, NordVPN has a whole host of security features as well, scanning websites and downloads for malicious content to avoid you getting scammed or hacked. And as I'm proud to have them as a partner to my channel here, I give you a great discount, which is 4 months extra free using the code Daniel Shensmith, which I'll put in the description below. Or you can just navigate to nordvpn.com/Daniel Shensmith. And of course, you get a 30-day money-back guarantee to change your mind. But once you see it up and running in action, protecting you from websites and downloads, and indeed keeping you anonymous online, you'll be really glad that you signed up. And for less than the price of a cup of coffee, it is absolutely worth it. It's simply a no-brainer. So don't forget the code Daniel Shensmith in the description, and I thank Nord for sponsoring this video. Right, so back to it. Let's sort out our own economy, shall we? Regardless of what this government is doing, so we can sort things out ourselves. There's a few tangible things you can do. There's a free thing I'll give you in a moment. And like anything else, if we want to know where we are and we want to know how to move forward, we need to know where we are right now. So if you want to lose weight, you jump on the scales. If you want to know whether you're fit or not, you go for a run, see how far you get, or you see how many press-ups you can do, and it gives you an instantaneous measure of where you are right now. And if you do a few things in a few weeks' time and you can measure the difference, you'll know exactly where you are. You can probably see some bars and stuff behind me lying on the floor down there. That's because I'm buying more equipment to do more exercise, because I've always been into fitness, and not long ago I broke one of my wrists and I couldn't really do much in the way of weights. Even now it hurts, even though I've started to get back into fitness, but we have to put things in place and get moving forward. So what can we do with our finances? Now, everything needs to be tracked. Everything, you need to know exactly where you are right now. So for that reason, we use and we develop this very rudimentary, but tell it as it is spreadsheet, which tells you exactly where you are, exactly what's going on, and it allows you to pick up the problems and deal with those problems. Now, this is a spreadsheet. It's freely available on blackbeltbarrister.com on the download section. You do have to sign up for the website, which is free, but then you can access this spreadsheet, download it for free. Be absolutely brutally honest with yourselves and put all of the figures in as they apply to you. Do this on a month-by-month basis. There are 2 strategies for getting out of debt, which is the #1 priority to be in control of your entire budget and your personal economy. Now, ideally, getting out of debt would include paying off any mortgage, and if you own a home, that is, but that's the one thing that we can sort of keep to the side and get out of all other kinds of debt, any other kind of commercial, retail, vehicle finance debt, whatever. Get out of all of those if you possibly can. And ultimately, the ultimate goal is to get rid of your mortgage as well. So many gurus online will tell you, don't pay off your mortgage, you know, you're just wasting money and all of this sort of stuff. Absolutely not. I don't agree with that. Because one thing I can tell you is this, and I borrow this from Dave Ramsey. If you don't know who he is, I'll link below. But one thing I can tell you is if you take someone who has paid off everything, including their mortgage, and they own their house and they own everything absolutely free, would they then go and pay a bank to have their mortgage back so that they are indebted back to that bank again? No, they wouldn't do that. They just don't do that. And anyone that still has a mortgage that tells you that it's not worth paying it off has probably never paid off the mortgage. So who are you going to take advice from? Someone that has paid off everything, every mortgage, every bit of debt in total, or someone that's still got that debt and tells you that it's not worth doing? Personally, I know who I would be listening to. And as I say, I'm just telling you what we do, and you can make up your own mind what you'd like to do. But this is where you start. However it is, this is where you start. Now, what you put into this spreadsheet, along with the income on the far left-hand side here, whatever your wages are, whatever your benefits are, whatever your saving interests are, your side hustles and things like that. And I've got a video on the side hustle and when and how you have to report to HMRC, etc. And the distinction between a side hustle making money or just selling your own things, which are not the same thing. That's been widely misconstrued. There's a video on that. I'll link that below. Once you've put all of these into here, and then along with your fixed monthly costs, such as your mortgage, your rent, your council tax, your energy bills, insurance, etc., then food expenses, moving through the spreadsheet, be brutally honest, literally take your bank statement and put in every single piece of information, into this spreadsheet in the appropriate column, and it will tell you a blueprint as to where you are right now, what percentage of your income you're spending on these different sections. Now, for different people, different sections will swell. Some people spend a lot more on food than others. Some people spend a lot more on transportation because of where they live. Some people have lots of pets. Some people have more children. And some people and other people in other expenses will be things like your entertainment and everything else where you're going out spending lots of money when you really, when you look at this spreadsheet, possibly can't afford it. And so that is where we come to some tangible plans here, things that you can actually do to get on top of your finances. Some of them are not necessarily putting money in a certain place, more understanding it. Let's take inspiration, for example, from the Dave Ramsey baby steps framework towards becoming a millionaire. All of that framework depends on budgeting, knowing where every pound or dollar is going and is allocated to. And if it's not allocated to fixed costs, then it's allocated to something else. And if it's not allocated there, then it's allocated towards paying off debt. And if it's not any of those things and you've paid off your debt, then it can go somewhere else towards investing. Now, for example, taking the first step, which is I think where you all should start if you haven't started there already, from Dave Ramsey's baby steps, is save an emergency fund. They say at least $1,000 or £1,000. Some people might think that's not enough depending on where you live, but absolutely you must have an emergency fund building up somewhere. And I think this is regardless of whether you've got any debt, regardless of what your income is, and regardless of what your outgoings are. You need to be able to carve out some sort of emergency fund so that if something happens and you absolutely need that money to pay for what's gone wrong, you have that there. Otherwise, it can break you, because if you depend on your car for work and your car breaks down, then you can't get to work, then your income is at risk if you physically cannot get to work. It is that serious. And so if you're thinking of holidays and weekends away and all these kind of things, instead of doing that, you can put the money into an emergency fund so that if the car goes wrong, you can fix the car, you can still go back to work. Because for most people, the vast majority of people, your income is your greatest wealth creation tool. Despite what Gary's economics says, most people that get rich do not get rich from inheriting from their parents. In fact, it's very much the reverse. Dave Ramsey's study of 10,000 odd millionaires, the vast majority of them inherited nothing from their parents. They all did it themselves through their income and investing gradually over time. Slow, steady, and boring is the way of doing that. So it is absolutely essential to have this emergency fund there so that you can keep that income stream going. And then, of course, the next step is working towards paying off your debt. So again, coming back to the fundamentals of how all of these steps work, I'll find a link and I'll link them below. But how all of these work is by budgeting this on a monthly basis so you know exactly what is coming in and exactly what is going out. Only then can you assign all of this money somewhere so that it's doing some good and working for you. Because the government is not going to do that for you. And ultimately, we need to work within the framework that we've got. Whatever tax framework is set, we have to abide by, and we have to do what we can within the rules. Next tangible thing, particularly if you've got a side hustle, side job, multiple jobs, or house that you rent out, or anything else, or anywhere that you want to make extra money, it is absolutely essential to understand the accounting rules where you might be able to save money where you can. For example, if you are just a self-employed person, not only is there a legal risk from that standpoint, not being a limited company, limited liability of having a company, but there are tax implications as well that you can benefit from if you set up that company, which is relatively inexpensive, and the smallish amount that you'll pay your accountant will be very well worth the money with what you can potentially save running it through a limited company than just doing it by yourself and not understanding all of the rules. So to emphasize, those are absolutely the essential first steps. Keying everything, and I mean everything, into this spreadsheet. You know exactly what is coming in, exactly what is going out, to know exactly where you stand. Next, some sort of emergency fund, working out what if the thing happened that could stop you from earning money, such as a car breaking down, how much you would need for that. Some say 1,000 is not nearly enough because a serious problem with a car could be a couple of thousand at least. We had a problem with the Land Rover just recently. It was in the region of £4,000. Literally, steering stopped working. It was not drivable, and it was £4,000 to repair. If we didn't have that and we depended on that car only, we'd be stuck. We had to have that emergency fund of £4,000 for which I actually think I'm going to sue Land Rover, but that's another story. But without that, that car would now be useless. We just wouldn't be able to drive it. So again, absolutely need that emergency fund. And the final thing I would say is, again, to emphasize that every single debt needs to go on this spreadsheet. Every credit card, every retail card, everywhere that you've got any kind of spending, borrowing, anything at all, any allowance at all, overdrafts, you name it, they need to go on this spreadsheet so you know exactly where you are and what's outstanding. Only then you can move on to the stage of actually paying them down, because you know where the money's going, you know where you can redirect it, and you can look at then how much you need to plug that gap. Then perhaps you can look at side hustles and what else you can do, and I'll cover some of those in another video. But these are the essential steps, and this spreadsheet is absolutely free. This is probably the most useful thing that you will have. It doesn't cost anything because we put it together. We literally use this spreadsheet, not with these figures because these are made up, obviously, but these are just dummy figures in here, and they're not necessarily going to reflect what you spend. They're just random figures. But this is genuinely what we use, and it is entirely free on the website, blackbeltbarrister.com. You do need to sign up, sign in, but it's free, and download the spreadsheet. Do that today. Let me know in the comments where you are at, whether you're far beyond this or whether this was useful to you. Please do let me know your comments. Many more videos to come. I enjoy the process of helping you to create wealth, as I do for myself. It's a bit of a passion of mine, in case that wasn't obvious. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Please do subscribe to the channel. That really does help the channel grow. And as always, thank you for watching.